Welcome to the Comfortable in Chaos Podcast. Strangle your demons and let's go.
Y'all need Jesus!
A 1, 2, 3. Got a good reason for taking the easy way out, yeah. I got a good reason for taking the easy way out now. She was a day tripper, a one-way ticket, yeah. It took me so long to find out, and I found out. Welcome to the Comfortable in Chaos Podcast. I am your host, Eric Hellberg, and you know we're like Einstein over here, men. We have no special talents. We're just passionately curious about all things pertaining to men. How in the hell did we get here? And where is it that we want to go? My God, help us. Do you realize, men, there is no way out of this? This Federal Reserve System has us sunk. Here's what I'm going to tell you right now. And our good old friend Elon, he made a recent post on X. America is going bankrupt now. And he accessed his good old friends, Shibatoshi Nakamoto. And he said, I'm glad 76% of the income tax I pay goes directly to important things, like interest on past government incompetence and money printing. Men, do you realize in this upcoming year, interest payments on U.S. national debt will shatter, here we go, $1,140 billion, meaning 76% of all income taxes collected will go to make an interest payment for 1 year on our burgeoning national debt. How can we get out of this? There are no more taxes to collect. It is inconceivable. It is an impossibility. Meanwhile, we look at these Democrats. Let's take Chelsea Clinton. $900,000 a year job directly out of college. $10 million New York City apartment. $3 million wedding in good old New York City. In the city that doesn't sleep. Yet they call us out on our American privilege. F you! And in the meantime, we have Kamala. And we think she is a woman. She's a woman, oh Lord, she's a woman. And we're told we need to vote for a woman. We got to level that playing field. That will give the United States of America better representation and better equality. But it is coming from the party, the Democrats, who cannot even define what a woman is. And hey, guess what, Democrats and you women? When you have a baby growing inside of you, that is not your body. It is the body of a baby, a separate being. It is not yours. So take care of your little boy or girl accordingly. That's one form of warfare. In the meantime, all we have is wars and rumors of wars. Brings us back to Matthew 24, chapter, verses 6 through 13. And when the New International Version of the Bible talks about wars and rumors of wars in Matthew and how they are signs of the end times, we're right there. However, Jesus instructs us to not be alarmed by these things, as they must happen. This purging must occur. Christ also speaks of famines, earthquakes, and false prophets, and boy, do we have those. BlackRock, Biden, Obama, Clinton, Kamala, and all the unelected people who really pull the strings. And we're going to ferret all those effers out. People like Klaus Schwab, the guy who just funded the $20 million of the resurrected Democratic war chest, Mr. Vice. Christ goes on to tell us these are all the beginning of birth pains or the beginning of sorrows. And why? Because the Lord knows that many will turn away from the faith and be persecuted. And that's what that free will is for. Are you going to stand fast and hold on to your faith? Or are you simply going to go by the wayside with everything the world has to offer? Those who stand firm, and you remember my first episode coming back from vacation this week, those are the ones who will make it through the narrow gate and be saved. Good old NATO is back in the mix. I tell you what, does anyone even know who comprises all the NATO countries to date? Does anyone even know this? I tell you what, now that we're on the tail end, I mean, it's still ongoing, right? After this Trump assassination attempt, you heard very little about the president of Slovakia, Robert Fico. He survived a similar attack while on stage a couple of months back, but no one's heard anything about it. What was his crime? He's a NATO member. Slovakia is a member of NATO. But guess what? Robert Fico held allegiance to Russia and Putin. We don't like that. That dude had to go, but he lived. Oh, yeah. And who do we have that kind of beat feet away from the NATO summit? Just 2 days before, President Trump's attempt on his life occurred, but none other than Viktor Orban, another NATO member in Hungary, who also said we need peace and is pro-Russia, met with Trump, took the messages back from Trump that they held in secret at Mar-a-Lago. The press didn't cover that. Went directly back to Putin and Zelensky after they had sent the initial messages from themselves through Viktor Orban back down to Trump. But did you know these two NATO member countries right now are threatening to take Ukraine to court for blocking Russian oil from Lukoil via the Soviet-built Druzhba, meaning the Friendship Pipeline, which is the last remaining route for Russian crude to Europe. Interesting. The world order, as it stands now, albeit it is crumbling, is willing to use a non-NATO member in Ukraine to block the oil that flows from Russia via the Friendship Pipeline. That's what Russia called it, as it pumped all this crude through its sworn enemy, that being NATO, to provide oil to all these Eastern European countries. So guess what? If you don't go our way, as Lenny Kravitz says, we'll even block your oil to our own NATO members. Meanwhile, Turkey, another NATO member, is getting ready to get the hell out of NATO. And we don't mind a NATO member like Turkey as long as it arms and funds Hamas and Hezbollah. What the is really NATO? Are you starting to see some inconsistencies here, men? It's no different than what we did with Nord Stream. We blew that mother ourselves. It was an intel op. And who suffered? All of Eastern Europe. And Germany even knew it. And since we're talking about similarly styled assassination attempts, both on the receiving end, that being President Trump, and Viktor Orban of Hungary, I just heard now that Trump has gone on Fox News with Jesse Waters, this is totally absurd, man, that he had a call with President Biden. So apparently President Biden was still somewhat cognizant that Saturday evening. Of course, we got the resignation notice on Sunday on false letterhead, a false signature, and we haven't heard one iota from him since. Okay. Evidently, President Biden, now keep in mind, Biden and Trump hate each other, and rightly so. They are committed firmly to their own camped ideologies, which are diametrically opposed to one another. And that is the battle for the soul of our nation. But why would a man with no relationship with the other tell President Trump, you are lucky that you turned your head to the right? No condolence, no empathy, no actual comparative discussion whereby this is tragic for our country. I can't believe this. How did this go down? What were you experiencing? All these type of things that make normal sense. Instead, he tells President Trump, you are lucky that you turned your head to the right. Really, Joe? Did you know if it is possible for you to know? And that while Donald Trump was dogpiled with the ephemeral and ineffective Secret Service, they were in an argument with the president, saying that there is a stretcher to the side of the stage and they would like him to lie down on it while they carry him out. Trump argued vehemently with them and said he was fine. He was going out on his own. Do you honestly think that these bastards who couldn't cover him up while he was down or before he was shot and or while he was standing were even going to consider covering him while he laid prostrate on a stretcher being carried out of the fairgrounds? Or would that made him available once again and vulnerable to another attack, possibly by a nearby shooter? And I believe that very well may have been the case. This was so laid out, man. This was so laid out. All right, so let's recap. Let's tie a nice bow and let's go around 360 degrees and at a complete circle. And as I said, coming back to the program after being away for a few days, we were getting back in the saddle again. Let's recap. It all started with President Xi Jinping of China visiting Hungary, meaning Viktor Orban, on May 10th. We're now in July, right? Then President Putin visited Xi in Beijing on May 16th. Aha! Then President Orban of Hungary visited Ukraine on 2 July, the 2nd of July, a day immediately after Orban assumed the Economic Council's rotational leader, the European Council's rotational leadership role. He made a surprise visit to Ukraine. Moving quickly, then what does Orban do? Because he is steadfast, resolute, but what I think is most important is he has said it's almost like a war of attrition. It will require perseverance. And I equate that to our Christian walk, men. This is a daily grind, one of perseverance, whereby good will ultimately prevail over evil if we just hang in there, stay in the fight, even though it is arduous. So after the surprise visit to Ukraine on July 2nd, he then makes not so much a surprise, but a surprise for people who found out. Orban then went to Moscow on 5 July. The 5th of July, he meets with President Putin. All right, what does he immediately do after that? He goes back to where it began. And President Orban of Hungary, then 3 days later, he likes these 3-day swings, he goes back to meet with Xi Jinping on July 8th. Ultimately culminating in the NATO summit, which took place in Washington, D.C., whereby Viktor Orban peels away from his NATO members. He shoots down to Mar-a-Lago on 12 July, and he meets with Trump. He gets Trump's commitment to cease the hostilities, actually end the war completely, as he specified in the debate. Orban is happy, and he gets ready to take the messages back to the principles we just discussed. The 13th, now, President Trump is in Butler, PA, and the shit hits the fan. And isn't it funny that our new demonized country that has been brewing for so long, of course, Russia's in our crosshairs, but China as well. But China seems to be the central figure in this remediation and or peacemaking process. Why in the world is it that the two countries that we have said are our mortal enemies, in fact, Putin must go. He has to go. He can't stand. He has to go. But these are the guys willing to make peace. And I haven't heard one U.S. official state the same. Here's where we're going, man. Spit, we are at a crossroads. And I know for many of my men, maybe they weren't taught to think differently. Maybe they didn't receive the guidance to do so. Maybe what they experienced early on left something linger in them where it made it prohibitively difficult to consider the outside counsel of others. Maybe there was a lack of growth. But at the same time, should you find yourself in that predicament, our modern American culture, and I don't give a F if it is the church, I don't give an F if it is our educational system, I don't give an F if it is our business environment. Most of these entities are wholly self-driven, and they are not going to provide that for you. It is incumbent upon you to become your own leader. So God first. He made you, and he made you with a purpose. You will pay him homage accordingly in what is appropriate for you and y'all's relationship together. That's number one. Number two, you are going to put time and resources into your own being. Even an assembly line robot left ungreased will break down. As you go, everything and everyone around you goes. We have to take care of ourselves. And then we start learning. We have been indoctrinated with so much crap to get us fixated in one direction that it allows those to deceive us. It is time, men, for us to put this together for ourselves, and we will do this together because men are very stubborn. I'm one of them. We are very resistant to change. And all I see as I look around at other men and I engage with other men, honestly, are broken,
disheartened, men in despair, men who would like to do something different but simply do not know how, and or, to use the world's term, they feel stuck. I've been right there many of time. We're trying to come out of it, and we will do so together for our individual betterment and for those who we care about. Now, and at the same time, it is these God-given attributes of resistance and stubbornness and an unwantingness to change that we have been created with. Why? Because we've been tasked with protection and provision. When we get outside of that realm, we're kind of like a floundering fish. We can adapt, oftentimes not as gracefully as a woman, because that was not our role initially designed for us. At the same time, that is what allows us to focus myopically, oftentimes on very difficult tasks, and then complete them to our desired level of proficiency. That's one thing. And it is because of that nature that they have spent so much time, effort, and so many resources to get you to act in a certain way, to believe in a certain way, and to become what the greater society at large purports that you should be. But men, that is not you. So, on a personal level, and when you look at what I just said, once you are molded, once you have been taught, once you have been guided, or once you took the own initiative of your own accord to fit that widget inside of that widget hole, you're thrown to shit. And we're living in an America that has thrown its men into the shit. And on a personal level, because of that resistance and that unwillingness to change, since I pretty much now have a gaggle or a harem of women listening to this show now, should you already have a generally well-meaning man who wants to leave a lingering presence beyond himself in this world when he is gone, and cares for those around him, and is willing to change in order to accommodate those that he loves and cares about, do not ever throw that man away. They are one of a kind. Society has already done that. Do not do it in the home. You are going to find that those men are rare. And it is those men that are being targeted by the institutional powers. You do not throw an accommodating man away who also is driven. They are one of a kind, and they will never come back. So until next time on the Comfortable in Chaos podcast, I bid you bon voyage, my burgeoning flock.